Today in this video, we're going to talk about golf rotors. Kelly Staggs here, American Irrigator, trying to make you a better irrigator. This channel is all about irrigation installation, design, maintenance, repair, everything irrigation. I've been a licensed irrigator for almost 15 years, done a lot of different things, and I've learned a lot of stuff from a lot of different good irrigators. And now I want to try to share that stuff with you to hopefully make you a better irrigator. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're having to either work on a golf rotor, install a golf rotor, or do anything with a golf rotor, there's a couple things that I want you to know and keep in mind that are very important and that might help you out anytime you're working on a golf rotor. Now, there are a few things that make a golf rotor different from any other kind of head that's out there. One of the main things is that a golf rotor is what's called a valve head. And so what it is there's a valve inside this head that has got a solenoid in it that you wire up, and everything is right here in this compartment. And so this one was taken out. We're moving it to a different area. You can see the wires were cut out of there that were coming out. But this being a valve head type of golf rotor it's going to tie directly into the main line. And so there's no other valve that's going to run into this. So there's not a valve off of the main line going into a lateral and then going into this head like you would in a typical valve and rotor situation. Everything is right here in here together. And so you're going to tie this head directly onto the main line. You're going to run your wires up into this valve. And if you've got a 2-wire system like we have here, we're going to put the decoder, your splice, and everything inside the compartment into this valve. This head right here is a Toro head. And you can take these tops off. And so what I wanted to show you was this being a valve and head, it's tied into the main line. And you can see here's the solenoid, here's the wire, solenoid here, and the valve is down in there. So everything is right here together. You don't have a separate valve then going to this head. It's all right in here together. Now what's cool about a lot of these golf rotors they have now is everything is serviceable from the top, and you don't have to necessarily dig this out. And so we're installing these, and these were actually older heads that we're relocating to different areas. But I wanted to be able to show you what the inside of this looks like. And here is the head part. This will pop up, the valve's in there, and then the head will pop up, and that's what will spray. But a golf rotor is a valve and head. It's all one unit. Now, something very important that you always want to pay attention to and keep in mind when you're working on a golf rotor. This being valve and head and tied directly into the main line is this whole thing right here is going to be under pressure. And so the system we're working on, it runs about 90 to 100 PSI, the pumps do, and then they shut off about 120, 130 PSI. And so there's a lot of pressure behind and going into these types of heads. Now, they typically got to have a minimum PSI to even run them. And a lot of times guys will run them at 80 to 90 PSI, and that's a good PSI to run these heads. A lot of times it's the kind of PSI that you have to have in order for these to even operate. Now, different manufacturers have different specs and different recommendations, but I just want to tell you there's a lot of pressure that has to go into here to make it run right and run properly. But then this whole thing is going to be under pressure. And so you want to keep that in mind when you're coming back to do any type of repair work, especially repair work on a golf rotor. And one of the things that I learned when I got a tour of the Rainbird plant, it's something that they mentioned, and I've always kept it in my head, and now I'm getting to use this kind of information, is when you are working on these heads and it's under pressure and you want to maybe test one out and turn it on manually, they've got a manual place. This is a Toro head. They've got a place to turn it on manually, but you never want to put your head directly over the top of these valve and head golf rotors. You always want to reach out like this and turn it on, but never have your face and your head above this. Because if there was ever a problem where something malfunctioned in this head, where it came loose and the whole valve and the riser part of the head pops out of there, if that were to hit you in the face, well, it would not be good. They actually talked about some guys that being a fatal accidents. People have died working on golf rotors. So you want to make sure you pay attention and you're very careful when you're doing any type of work on a golf course or working on a golf rotor somewhere. So that is one of the things I want you to remember and think about when you're working on these heads. The other thing that you need to know is that the threads on these heads are what's called an Acme thread. And so the threads are different from your typical steel pipe thread or pipe thread. And so you're gonna have to have a special fitting to screw into here than to go to any other type of fitting. If you're gluing one in, if you're putting a swing joint in, you can get a swing joint like we have here. This particular swing joint has an Acme end on this end. And you can see it's got a little gasket there. And every one of these ends, except for this end, is an Acme thread. And so this will thread directly in to this golf rotor here. And this is kind of what it looks like. The threads are kind of flattened out. They're a little bit different. But on this swing joint we've got on this end, this is a regular pipe thread that I can thread a fitting onto and then glue another fitting on and go on to my main line. And so that's what we've got on this end of this swing joint. They make different types of fittings and different types of adapters for these swing joints and for these golf rotors. But you always want to remember that this is not a regular thread. So you can't just go thread in a male adapter or a regular swing joint into here. You've got to have an Acme threaded type fitting. So here's what it looks like. I'm kind of in the ditch here, but we've got a 3-inch main line coming in. What I did was I just teed off that 3-inch main line with a 2-inch, and then it's going over to our swing joint there and right into our golf rotor. So this is kind of a typical setup is what you'll see. Sometimes you'll see the swing joint right off the main line here. I just brought it over a little bit on this in this case, but that's typically what you're going to see installation of a golf rotor.